all my paranormal misfits, and welcome to the Paranormal Misfit podcast. I am your host, Chrissy, and I'm here to talk about all things paranormal and spooky. From experience that I or someone else has had, to the shows, movies, and books, to lores and legends, and to the places known for the paranormal. I'm going to talk about all of it. I myself am a believer with a healthy set of skepticism. You'll hear my thoughts and feelings about different topics revolving around the paranormal, so cozy up with your favorite beverage of choice and listen along. Hello, my ghouls, and we are back for the 5th episode. Look at me, I'm getting a little quicker on this. Okay, so anyways, tonight's podcast is about the South End Werewolf. This is one of the more obscure and bizarre investigations done by the Warrens, and yeah, it was a little bit of a wild ride as I was reading and trying to look up facts and listen to different podcasts and everything. So, fun little tidbit about this. So, as they've been making, obviously, the different franchises revolving around the Warren cases. They had the Conjuring. What is it? Conjuring 1, 2, and 3. It was rumored that they thought the Conjuring 3 was going to be about this case in particular, but then they went with The Devil Made Me Do It. So anyways, let's get back to the actual case here. So the South End Werewolf is one of the most bizarre cases investigated by the Warrens in Essex, England. So a carpenter named William Bill Ramsey, he goes by Bill, first name William, don't know how that ever equates to Bill, but anyways, so a carpenter named Bill Ramsey claimed to be possessed by a demon who would compel him to transform into a werewolf. So the first time this happened to him was when he was 9 years old, and he wouldn't transform, and I put quotations around that, again until his adulthood, where he would fly into fits of rage, displaying inhumane strength, baring his teeth and growling while curling his hands into claws. So, let's see. The Warrens caught wind of this in 1989, so this is one of their very popular 1980s cases. And with that, they had caught wind of it while they were doing another investigation in London, I believe. And what happened is that once they caught wind of it, they met with him and his family, well, him and his wife at the time. And they had mentioned, I think it would be very beneficial that you would come to our church over in Connecticut as opposed to the church here in England, because we just feel more comfortable with our church. And yeah, they had him travel to Connecticut so that they could have him undergo an exorcism with their specialist, Bishop Robert McKenna. All right, now let's get on to the nitty-gritty background of Bill. I think my toddler is trying to get into the room. So Bill came from a fairly normal English family. Okay, getting back to it. So Bill came from a fairly normal English family upbringing. He had 8 siblings, and his teacher said that he was very curious and intelligent, though he wouldn't always push himself in his studies, I want to say is how it was worded. So yeah, so eight siblings. So the first time, apologies, let's go back. So background on Bill: raised and born in Essex, England. He had a normal childhood, loving parents, quiet life. He had 8 siblings, smart, intelligent, all the things I just said. So so the first time that it happens, him and his siblings had went to a movie, and upon returning from the movie, he went out into their backyard and started playing. And while he was playing, he stated that an icy wind swept through, and this is where little Bill would experience his first transformation, so to say. He stated that the sweat froze on his skin and a foul stench swept over him, making him nauseous. Two things that stuck in his adolescent mind at that time was the overwhelming want to head towards the beach and hop on a ship, and the other one being wolves. Some external force overtook Bill as he uprooted a very hefty fence post, one that his own dad had issues with, swinging it around, and finally he gnawed on some mesh fence border. His parents watched in horror as he acted out. His mom did try to get through to him, and it was stated that once his subconscious heard his mother's voice, he got quiet and then he flew into a larger fit of rage, basically. Um, so after some time, he finally calmed down and was back to his old self. And this didn't happen again for about another 15 years. So by his mid 20s, Bill had gotten married, started a family of his own, and I believe it's stated two years into his marriage, um, he would start to have nightmares of, about feeling of dread and uneasiness. And, this would continue and continue and continue. And then 18 months after the last nightmare, he awoke one night thinking he heard sounds of panting, heavy animal panting, only to realize it was he who was making the noise. So after this, about another 15 years would pass before anything would take place again. So by 1983, Bill was out with some friends, and the same icy feeling presented itself while he was out at the pub. Bill quickly excused himself to the restroom, where he stated that as he looked into the mirror, there was a reflection of a werewolf staring back at him. On the way home in the taxi, the primal urge took over and he bit his friend in the leg. The driver of the taxi kept his cool and stopped the cab basically in the middle of the road and tried to remove Bill. A struggle ensued for a little bit, and then Bill basically kind of converted back to normal. Christmas of the same year, he felt he was having a heart attack and checked into the hospital. It was there during an exam by a nurse that the primal urges came back and he bit the arm of the nurse. He then sprinted through the ER, shoulders hunched and hands in the shape of claws, baring his lips like a rabid animal. He ran through anyone who tried to stop him. It took several orderlies, ooh, that's a word, and an officer to finally subdue him. After the tranquilizer that he was injected with had wore off by the next morning, the doctors were more receptive to Bill's version of the previous night's events. They offered to keep him for observation, but Bill decided against this. 2 months later, he was back there again, this time attacking 4 officers and injuring one. He was offered once again to admit himself, which he didn't, and was released. So, we had, what is that? We had over a year of some attacks and stuff. 3 years passed without incident, and after a questionable solicitation of a minor, so basically he was soliciting a prostitute, um, the prostitute got out of the car and he flew into another fit of rage. At this time, a lone officer had went and touched him, in which he went into the primal rage. So a lone officer and 2 inspectors took him down. Over the next few weeks, as he was hospitalized, MRIs and X-rays were done with no answers to his ailments. At this time, the Warrens were in London and had heard about this and stated that he was, in fact, possessed by a malevolent spirit. Go figure. Ah, the Warrens. They had convinced him it was in his best interest to come to Connecticut to their church. A tabloid had bankrolled the trip and served as a sponsor. And the night before the exorcism, it was stated that the primal urge came back, and he almost choked his wife out, basically. So when Bill turned up at the church, the Warrens' own specialist, Bishop McKenna, performed an exorcism. It was stated, now this exorcism is videoed. There's a couple of people, probably more than a couple of people, honestly. When I did this search, it was huge. quite a few people on YouTube have shared this video that was taken, so you could probably find it. I did not go looking for it, so anyways, the first 30 minutes, nothing happened with Bill not being convinced, that obviously he was demonically possessed or that it was going to help him. So there's that. At some point during the exorcism, though, Bill's face started to contort and he clenched his hands, in which the bishop commanded the spirit or demon to leave this place forever, basically. And as I stated, the exorcism is recorded. Bill's last known public appearance was in 1992, and since then, no other rampages have been reported since in Essex. All right, so let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Some people think that this is a clinical lycanthropy. Sorry. English. Great. Yeah. So some people think it's clinical lycanthropy, which is basically where someone believes that they're a werewolf, or an animal. A good portion of this does kind of feed into schizophrenia, depression, bipolar. So to me, as I'm reading this and as I read many and listened to a few podcasts, totally screams mental illness that just went undiscovered, because you got to think about it. So he's 9, and I want to say he was born in 1950. I think it was like 1952 or something. So, he's 9, and mental health is not like one of those forefronts, right? It was either, I don't even think there were really any decent medication, any decent psychologist or psychiatrist. It's either get locked up in the insane asylum or, have an ice pick through a certain area, or maybe some electrotherapy or something. So anyways, so one of my main issues is that there was no mental health checks done. And the only thing he really had done was MRIs and x-rays. Depending on which podcast, depending on who you're reading, some say that he did have it. Some say that he didn't. From what I was reading and some of the background that I do have in the medical field from, getting my CNA license and then starting nursing school, there was nothing that really screamed he went into a psychiatric area and got checked. It screamed more of, hey, these doctors at the hospital, never having made it to a ward or having to, be involuntarily checked in, be any of that, into the wards. It doesn't really say that he was fully checked. So, this could be some sort of mental health issue like schizophrenia. A chill takes him over. It's hard to break him out of a trance. Fits of rage, and then it just goes dormant. Different things. Could even be bipolar. Who knows? I mean, I'm not one to really, make a diagnosis, but this definitely, okay. It's super erratic. Like I said, he was 9 years old was the first time. And then, it goes dormant for 15 years, comes back up again for, a few times. So you're looking at 1983 happens again while he's out with friends and there's drinking involved. Happens once there. And then 2 months later, or Christmas of the same year, wasn't 2 months later, but Christmas of the same year, it happens again. And then 2 months after that, which puts you into February, it happens again. So to me, it seems that maybe there was some sort of mental health issue that kind of went unnoticed, kind of went under the radar. He never bothered to voluntarily check himself in, even though it was offered. And I don't understand why it was offered when you attack officers like 2 and 3 freaking times. You bite the arm of a nurse and you're not involuntarily put in. Like, I don't know. Nowadays, I know that wouldn't swing after working in the ER as a patient sitter that I was, I've seen some stuff. But then again, when it comes to, and it's the case that the Warrens are part of, once again, it's, you never get to see and understand and get any more background on the actual health factors that they may have going on, or any mental health issues. You just, like, immediately you're telling me that you're hearing about the case, you hear about it from some officers, because this town wasn't a very big town. It was like maybe 100,000. And they're so willing to give up information to the Warrens. And here goes Lorraine. Oh, he's possessed by a malevolent spirit. Like, how do you come up with that? How? I don't even, and I don't know a lot about it, because that's just an area that I believe that I just don't want to touch. But how do you come up with he's possessed by a malevolent spirit? What malevolent spirit do you know makes people want to transform into a wolf or a werewolf, per se? I mean, I don't know. That's just me. I will say that during his episode where he was caught soliciting um, some stuff from a prostitute, that while the police officer that touched him on the arm and he flew into that one fit of rage, he stated, and this is a loose statement because I've heard it a couple different ways on a different podcast. So basically, the gist of the what's quoted, that even the police officer quoted, was, he told the police officer, "The devil is in me. I'm going to kill you." So, and I think the 80s had kind of that uproar of satanic panic. So I feel like maybe some satanic panic in there. I don't really think he was ever possessed. I mean, they're talking. It doesn't even sound like it was that long of an exorcism. But once again, I didn't go look it up. I didn't go look for the tape. The first 30 minutes, nothing happens. The little bit that does happen, all that happens is his face contorts and then he curls up his hand to look like that of a claw. And then touch on the forehead, a little sprinkling of some holy water, and poof, be gone, demon, and it's gone. Like, I kind of have issues. And on top of that, the man has flown completely under the radar. Not that I think that once someone goes through it, they're going to be wanted to be out in the press or anything. Like, we don't know anything about this guy past 1992. Nothing. We don't know if he's lived a good life. We don't know if he was completely healed. We don't know if he ever made it into a psychiatric ward. We don't know if he ever had some sort of mental illness, because he completely vanished off the face of the earth, it seems. Like, we don't even know if he's still alive. And if he's not still alive, hopefully you're resting well. But anyways, so yeah, this is my little take on the South End Werewolf. You can Google it. It's an infamous case of the Warrens. I did not know that, mainly because I'm not a huge Warrens fan. I don't go looking for their stuff. Now, I do like the movies. I think those are well directed, and honestly, I love the actors in it. But I myself am not a huge fan of the Warrens. And that's where I'm going to leave it. And if you want to check out some podcasts on that, so if you want just like the more paranormal outlook of this particular case by the Warrens, I loved listening to Scared to Death podcast. I think they did a wonderful job. Basically just focusing strictly on the case itself, not going into any of the mental illnesses or anything they may think. That's one of them. Now, if you're looking for more feedback on what people really think about the Warrens, I got a list. I'm going to share a couple. Once I pull them up, I apologize. I didn't think about this. So one of them is, who was I just listening to? There's my library. Ghoul's Trip. I think they do a really good job diving into debunking the Warrens, because, Amityville Horror and Annabelle, those two I always questioned. I always questioned all of them, but those two for sure. They did a really good job breaking those down. I think that's it for right now. There was a guy on TikTok that I follow. I would turn it on, but then you would hear my loud ass TikTok. Let me see. Turn down the phone real quick. There is a guy on TikTok. I believe he also has a podcast. I wholeheartedly love it. BG the Web Guy. He does have a conspiracy and paranormal podcast called Unrefined. I'm gonna have to check that out. I think I might have added it. He also does some takes on Mr. Zach Bagans as well. His TikToks are great. I really like them. And that concludes this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. As always, if you want to give me your thoughts, your opinions, share some facts or anything, you may know more about this case, please feel free to slide into my DMs or leave me a comment on one of my posts on Instagram, and I will get back to y'all. Well, that concludes this episode of the Paranormal Misfits. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest, make sure you subscribe to this podcast on whichever platform you're listening to on, and give me a follow on Instagram at Paranormal Misfit. If you have your own spooky paranormal story you'd like to share or want to hear about a particular lore, place, or whatnot, please feel free to drop me a DM in Instagram. And on that note, I will catch you all later at the next episode, my ghouls.